Thank you for joining us this evening. Solicitor Davis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I just want to thank the committee for this opportunity, my first opportunity, of course, to appear before you in support of the Law Department's important work. It's been a real privilege and an honor. I'm truly privileged and honored to have received the mayor's invitation to come on board and lead this department of really, truly hardworking men and women. And I'm just so proud of the work we've done in the 8 months that I've been here, and I look forward to continuing that work and to continuing to work on behalf of the mayor and city council and the people of Baltimore. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we performed admirably this year. I want to extend my thanks to David Ralph, who, as all of you well know, was the interim solicitor for the period between August of 2016 and my arrival in September of 2017. David did a fantastic job, and I had lunch with David a couple of weeks ago, finally after promising him he's doing well. I'm sure he would want me to say he sends his greetings, and I paid for lunch. I want that on the record. And we did talk a little business. David has adverse interest to the city now, as we would expect. Nothing he worked on when he was with the city, of course, but we got to talk a little business as well as catch up with each other. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions and to be as responsive as I possibly can.
So I know
I want
there's
to acknowledge Mr. President's presence as
I know
well.
there's some slides prepared,
Yeah.
so if you want to go through.
Okay. So I'm going to highlight the 4 areas. There'll be a further law department presentation at a later time on the minority and women's business group, but tonight we're here on just these 4 areas. Administration, of course, is that service in which I sit, as well as about 3 or 4 other people, as well as 3 additional people from an internal service. We run the place, we manage the place, and I'd like to say we do a good job of that. I was very fortunate this year to bring on board a human resources professional who came over from human resources, replacing a longtime faithful employee of the administrative service. She hit the ground running. She's been a real godsend. Teresa Cummings is her name. And we're very pleased with the use we've made of the taxpayers' money and lifting the game of the administration service within the law department and being very responsive, I think, to the council, to the second floor, as well as to taxpayers. Service 861, of course, is our biggest service, the controversies group. As you know, that consists of the litigators in the department, the labor and employment office in the department, the land use part of that land use group does some litigation. And technically, although it's a separate service, the legal affairs group also we consider part of the controversies group. We expect to handle pretty close to 460 and probably more than that lawsuits in the upcoming fiscal year, council members. The gun trace task force trial, of course, is over, but the collateral consequences of that sad chapter in Baltimore City's life is yet to come down upon us. We have reduced the number of law firms that we historically have employed to represent law enforcement officers in anticipation that there will be a concentration of certain kinds of lawsuits in which we will have to provide representation to a smaller number of officers than in the past. we have been pleased so far this calendar year that fewer lawsuits have been filed against the city than we anticipated, frankly, a year ago, but we know that they are coming and we want to be prepared for them. So our output measure of number of lawsuits, we think will easily satisfy that 460 figure that you see up there, and we expect to exceed that. The effectiveness of this unit, you'll notice we expect a 67% payout of what's claimed versus what we actually pay. Excuse me, let me back up. The 67% is the amount we collect for the city, not what we pay. And we think that that's a realistic goal for fiscal 19. Our collections office, which is a part of the controversy, is a hardworking office. And my motto, I got a number of mottos in the department, council members, but my motto is, and the lawyers and support staff in the department know, our position is, if you owe Baltimore City any money, we are coming after you. We are coming after you. We're not going to be foolish. We're not going to expend lots of resources trying to collect small amounts, although we're going to go after the small amounts too. But we are focused on those entities, private property taxes and that kind of thing, of larger entities that for one reason or another, over the years, from time to time, have believed that if they don't pay voluntarily, perhaps nothing will happen. And that's not the message that this law department is sending out. The message this law department is sending out is, if you don't pay, if you owe the city money, we're coming after you. Now, again, I want to be understood. We're going to be fair, and we're going to be reasonable. And I hope most of you remember my comments when I said my first hello to the council back in September. Sometimes it matters as importantly as how you win a case or lose a case as it does that you win the case or lose the case. And so what I meant by that, and I've gotten quite an education, frankly, the interesting thing about Baltimore City is that Baltimore City, the mayor and city council of Baltimore, is both an insurance company as well as a defendant. So I was just talking to the vice president about one of her constituents who has a claim against the city, and all of you have constituents with claims against the city. And so what we try to do on both the collection side as well as on the claim processing side is look at the circumstances, be fair and impartial, be sympathetic, follow the law, but recognize that sometimes the city is at fault. The city is at fault sometimes. And when the city's at fault, we want to discover that and uncover that as quickly as possible. And we're not interested in sending people through a bunch of hoops in order to get compensated when a backup or a flood or something of the sort happens. At the same time, we are vigorously defending the city. So we are defending the city, and we are seeking compensation from those who hurt city property, whether it's a lamppost, a stop sign, or whatever it is. We're going to find out who did it, if we can, and we're going to go after them, and we're going to engage in fair negotiations to seek compensation that the city is due. So on the controversy side, we're very busy. We've got excellent lawyers. I think we're meeting our benchmarks, and we will continue to do so. On the transaction side, every member of this committee is familiar with our excellent advice and counsel office, led by Elena DiPietro, Hillary Rulli, and Victor Tervala are truly excellent lawyers, and they provide you with advice, they provide you with bill reviews, they provide you with answers to questions before the ink gets dry, virtually speaking, on your questions. And we're very proud of the work that they do. We're equally proud of the work that the real estate folks do, and of course, the contract folks. The work of the contract unit is really important. We work very closely with procurement, with the police department, with all of the agencies in the city government to make sure that the agreements that agencies and departments enter into are clear, are beneficial to the city, and should disputes arise, we can make our case, if necessary in court, in support of our interpretation of those agreements. So I think we're meeting our benchmarks. I know we're meeting our benchmarks. I will mention, as you can see on the slide, although the number of Public Information Act requests seem to have leveled off, we have every reason to believe that they truly are going to increase. Frankly, it's my impression that many more media people and non-media people are learning about the Public Information Act and how easy it is, frankly, to make a request. We often get requests that are so large and so, frankly, convoluted that we have to work with the requester to sort of narrow the request. But we think that's an important part of transparency in government. It clearly is, and we take those responsibilities seriously. Of course, you are accustomed to our excellent work product and bill reviews. We get those turned around very quickly, and the sooner you get your requests to us, we'll get those answers back to you. Finally, again, the minority office will be before you later in the session. For the police department, what more can I say? Members of the council, we had our regular monthly session with Judge Berdar yesterday. The focus was on technology, and I will tell you that Frank Johnson, the Chief Information Technology Officer for the city, had to stand in sort of at the last minute for his deputy in front of Judge Berdar, who had a death in the family down in North Carolina and couldn't appear. Frank did a great job. He answered Judge Berdar's questions very carefully. We had a number of the officers from the police department appear before Judge Berdar, and Judge Berdar is satisfied, I'm confident, that the city is doing absolutely everything it possibly can do within the constraints of the budgetary process, and the police department has a plan in place, a draft plan which is going to be finalized in the coming weeks that will ramp up our technology ability. More broadly, the anticipation of lawsuits coming against the police is something that we are planning for, that we are bulking up our legal knowledge, our defenses. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the Gun Trace Task Force or any other matter. But again, we will look at every case on a case-by-case basis, every case on a case-by-case basis, and we will make a determination of when the city has failed its people. And when the city, acting through its agents, has grievously failed its people, then we're going to do our best to do the right thing. At the same time, we are not going to stand up for these criminals who were convicted in federal court. That is not the mission of the Baltimore City Police Department. It's not the mission of this city council. It's not the mayor's mission. And so we're gonna work very hard to be fair, transparent. We're gonna achieve excellence in all that we do, and we are going to implement this consent decree, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, in a way that I'm telling you, I'm predicting, and I'm promising. You're going to be proud of this police department when we get to the end of this consent decree implementation process. That's a big promise that I just made to you. But I have every intention of carrying it out. I have every intention of meeting our benchmarks and our effectiveness and the use we'll make of the internal funds that come to the law department through the police department will be used maximally, I guarantee you. Just a couple of highlights, and then I'm happy to take any questions. Of course, we are very excited that the finance department has been persuaded, because we worked hard to persuade Mr. Raymond and Mr. Sinema and Ms. Sturgis, that we can do a better job of workers' compensation defense for the city than has been done. And that's not to criticize the fine law firm that has been representing the city for more than a decade. But we have ramped up. We are going to provide excellent representation to the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore in workers' compensation matters. We're going to work very hard to uncover fraud, because we know there's fraud out there, and we're going to find it. We hope it's not much, but we are going to protect the taxpayers' funds as best as we possibly can. Baltimore City is not a wealthy jurisdiction. We need every penny we can get, and we need to save every penny we can save. And when someone gets hurt on the job, they should get fair compensation and be treated fairly and with dignity. But at the same time, if they're hurt on a Saturday night coming out of the movies, and somehow that hurt turns into a workers' compensation claim down the road, we're going to fight that. We're going to fight that. So we're looking forward to this new venture of workers' compensation coverage. We've got a just a fantastic set of lawyers that we've lined up. We weren't planning to start until July 1st, but we're starting a little bit early. We've got the files, we've got the schedule, and we are ready to proceed with that. So with that, I hope I haven't gone on too long. I'm happy to take any and all questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, sir. Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On one of the slides, the lawsuits handled, can you make sure that you let us know how many of the lawsuits that we have lost and the amount that it cost us? When you talk about going after folk like cars who knock our poles down and damage our property, you have to convince the police department to write reports and get that information so you can get it. Because I've been down this lane since I've been on this council, because I see how cars knock down our poles and the police don't even write a report, you know, and they need to write the report because it's damaging city property, and we have, the taxpayers of Baltimore, of which I'm one, have to pay that bill, you know. So if you can do that, I would really, really appreciate that. Okay, that's it.
I will certainly do that, Mr. President.
Okay. Oh, I know what it was. With the police department being a state agency, and I know you sent me something to that effect. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I know the council probably feel the same way. If it's a state agency, why is the state not helping to pay these lawsuits, being a state agency? You know, so if that's the case and they're not going to pay it, then we need to get the agency back under the hands of the city. You know, and we need to, and that's one thing I'm going to push for. So I'm going to talk to the mayor about that. I know the mayor was opposed to that, but if we're paying the suits anyway, why should we have the state doing that? Then we can change a lot of things with the police department as it relates to how what is it, like the majors and all of them, that they have to live in the city or don't be a major.
I'm very sympathetic to that view, Mr. President, and as we've said before, it's a complicated matter. One of the things that I hope we can do next year is get the city delegation to get more money for the police department out of Annapolis. That is, frankly, a very plausible alternative to actually converting the police department into a city agency, which could be done in Annapolis. They could give it back to us, but that raises a host of legal issues that we'd have to deal with. But if they would just give us more money to use in law enforcement, in personnel and other ways, frankly, I think we'd be better off.
I'm hoping that the consent decree decrease the number of lawsuits because they would be doing better policing. And I also believe that when these officers are found guilty, like the gun task force, we need to go after them for their assets. We need to actually go after them. Somebody have to pay. I mean, the FOP president wrote that I was anti-police. I can't be anti-police and I have relatives in various police agencies throughout the state. So I took offense to that, and I'm going to deal with that later, you know, at the right time. But we need to go after these officers who have been convicted and found guilty. We need to go after their access.
Mr. President, I couldn't agree with you more. And there was a rather notorious case just a couple of weeks ago you may have read about, not one of the GTTF officers, but this officer was found guilty by a jury. And in words that many believe were not appropriate, the judge not only gave him a PBJ, but did not order him to make restitution. And we felt very strongly about that.
He's suing us, right?
Well, he was, and he withdrew from that lawsuit. Now, we're going to sue him.
Okay.
Because we have an obligation to the taxpayers and to you, Mr. President, to every member of this committee. As I said, if you owe the city money, we're coming after you.
I hope he's not still working for the police department.
Well, we've got to go through a process because I testified about this down in Annapolis. When a judge gives an officer a PBJ, we tried to change the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights. I went down, I testified 4 times in Annapolis. We tried to change the law enforcement Bill of Rights.
I understand that. Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
I had this idea, and I know people would think I'm crazy, of disbanding the police department and starting new. Let the sheriff department and the state troopers come in and police the city, have all of the officers that want to remain officers reapply for their jobs. We'll root out all the corruption and all that other stuff. Because we have some good people in the police department
We do.
that I believe will be able to get back into the agency. But in order to clean up everything, I think we need to start from scratch.
Just to complete the thought, I appreciate that, Mr. President. That officer has not resigned, is still on the force, is going to receive back pay because the judge gave him a PBJ. And
I hope we're going to appeal the decision. Can we appeal?
we cannot appeal.
Oh, my God.
Of course, it was, the state's attorney's office handled the criminal case. So what we can do is what we're going to do is we're going to go after the restitution that the judge didn't order, so now we have to bring the lawsuit against the officer. And of course, the officer will be subject to discipline within the police department. And that, of course, is one of these processes where the officers have a lot of due process.
I'm not trying to cut you off.
No, we're on the same
City
page.
Solicitor, but it seems to me if I get a PBJ and I go and apply for a job with the police department, I can't have it. But yet he can have one and still have his job. Wow.
Councilman
The
Henry.
mayor's bill tried to change that in Annapolis. And
But if we do what I suggest, all that goes away.
Councilman Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon. All right, for a little bit longer. Actually, the first question I was going to ask was going to be an MBEWB, but I understand we've got another panel later on, so I'll hold that for then. I was trying to remember who it was. I don't think it was the mayor at the time, but it was somebody on her staff. When I was first sworn in, their comment to me was, "Congratulations, you are now party to over 100 lawsuits." That's one of the nice things about being a council person. I was thinking about it when you were saying that the city is both an insurance company and a defendant. We're in an odd position of being, I guess, on the board of directors of an insurance company where we are often telling people to sue us, which is probably not typical behavior for most insurance company boards. I wanted to ask a little bit about the way that our collections is bifurcated between the law department and risk management. And I'm sorry that my colleague from the 3rd District isn't here because I think he was also very interested in this as well. First of all, we're ecstatic about the zeal with which you're willing to pursue people who have damaged city property and have cost the city money, and I'm glad that you're going after them. From an organizational development perspective, though, it's always a little, troubling when you find out that 2 different agencies are doing different parts of what is generally, one big thing. Have you had any conversations with Mr. Raymond about looking towards correcting this historical bifurcation in whatever direction would turn out to be the most, practical?
The answer is yes, and in some ways even more important than Mr. Raymond, although nobody's more important than Mr. Raymond, with Frank Durr. He
Oh,
brought
right, yeah,
his
sure.
entire staff over to the law department a couple of months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago or so, and we had a great 2.5-hour meeting.
Okay, good.
I met all of the managers over there in the Woolman building, and Mary Keenan, head of collections in the law department. We had a great discussion, and those discussions are continuing.
Okay,
Councilman.
great.
Absolutely. I am laser focused on cleaning up, if you will, and rationalizing that entire process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilwoman Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I guess first of all, it's amazing how a personality of a leader can make or break the whole aura of a department. And I just want to thank you for just bringing inclusiveness, all those things that are needed to, the law department, in my opinion, had really kind of been they just kept themselves secluded, and I'm talking about mainly the leader. And you have, since you've been on, you have been open, you've been transparent, you've communicated with every council member. That, believe it or not, has never happened in the tenure that I've been here on the council. So that speaks volumes in how you're going to continue to make changes and improve on our law department, which I can see some things happening already.
Thank you so much.
So all that to say, I have just one question. We have a new inspector general that has started. Could you, I'm sure you're going to be connecting with her, because part of her goal is working on fraud and different things. Can you just kind of explain, I guess, how you're maybe going to work together and some of the things that you're doing differently with her office?
We are working very closely together. She, I think, is fantastic. She has already, in just her 4 months that she's been at work in the city, has conducted at least 4 very serious investigations, at least 2 of which have resulted in criminal proceedings. She has had several staff turnover occasions where she has improved her staff, I believe, although it's not to criticize anybody, but she has really ramped up the staff. And so we're still working out the details of our relationship, because she has a certain responsibility, and I can support that, but she needs the confidentiality and the authority to conduct her investigations without interference. And that's what we've all promised her, the mayor, council president, and that's the way she needs to go about it. But we're going to work very closely together. I'm sure you've seen the website where she put up the hotline, and I believe the Board of Estimates just, perhaps today, approved her purchase of some reasonably cost software that is really going to ramp up her ability to manage her cases, as well as to process the hotline tips that come into the office from people all over the city, all over the country, really, when they have information. So
It doesn't interfere with anything that you do. In fact, it sounds like it's enhancing it.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And she doesn't, for example, have any authority over what you might call simple employment disputes. If there's a dispute in the workplace, if it's an equal employment opportunity dispute or discrimination complaint, she won't get involved in that. She'll learn about those kinds of things, but she will turn that matter over to the law department, and the law department will take appropriate action to consult with the agency head or the relevant people involved. So I think we've got a very clear pathway forward to work together on matters of mutual concern and not step on each other's toes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Judge Davis, I just wanted to thank you for your service to the city. I'm sure that you could make a lot more money in the private sector. And I think that's important to say and to acknowledge, and thank you publicly for that. And I recall when your name was first floated, and I'm sorry I had never heard of you. I'm not in the legal circuit. But everything that I heard from everyone was extremely impressive, and you've turned up to be nothing short of that. So thank you, and we need more people of your stature, and certainly more people of your integrity in city government and local government. So thank you. Mr. President?
Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay, this is my final question. We're going to take a look as we negotiate the budget of the drop program, because it needs to be dropped.
I understand.
Good.
I'm good.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Judge Davis. We are, well, first off, you are missed on the OSI board. Several board members have told me as much. Did want to say we, both my colleague and I, as well as the president and everyone else, share an interest in seeing more of our young people in Baltimore go into the law and into the law department. Too many of our city agencies, too much of the staff does not live in the city. We're not doing enough to home grow our talent. My colleague is very passionate about apprenticeships. I've started a youth jobs program that focuses on pathways into various industries. I'm wondering, would you consider, and are you considering, creating some sort of pathway into the law department for children from Baltimore? I know a lot of the work is probably confidential and would not be assisted by having a 16-year-old there necessarily, but I also know that you have a passion for young people, and also, I'm sure, want to see more of our young people going into law and the law department. Any ideas on that?
I do very much care about our young people, Councilman. On Monday, we will have, beginning in the law department, 6 students from the University of Baltimore and the University of Maryland Schools of Law starting 8-week internships in the law department. And one of the things I've done this year is I've just absolutely insisted that it not be simply a shadowing kind of program. Not that it was before, but I've, in all honesty, kind of driven the committee of lawyers within the department who are putting together this program. I've kind of driven them crazy because I've insisted that every one of those law students have real, substantive legal work to do, not just going to somebody's trial and sitting there and watching the trial. I've even gone so far as to say, if they go to a trial with one of our lawyers, the lawyer from the department must ask the judge presiding for permission for the law student to come up inside the bar and actually help the lawyer at the trial table. Frankly, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it kind of bothered me, frankly, and I'm pleased to be able to say this in public. Some judges won't permit law students to participate in that way. There's this idea that if you're not a lawyer, then you can't come up and help the lawyer. And I regret that, and I hope that when we make this request, the judges will accede to our request, because law students get better at what they're doing by doing it, not by necessarily watching somebody else do it. So we'll have those 6 for 8 weeks. Now, we also have, again this year, as we always do, 2 law-length students, 2 Baltimore City High School students who will be working in the law department, I think for 6 weeks. Maybe it's 10 weeks for the high school students, and we're going to put them to work as well. Obviously, they're not in a position to do legal work as such, but they can do administrative tasks, and they will be spending 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day in the presence of lawyers, learning what lawyers do, and hopefully generating an interest in pursuing that as a career path. During the school year, last year, this year, as in previous years, we have 2 community law in action students, high school students working in the law department.
Great.
This year, 2 were from Mervo. They were great young men. And the lawyers in the department love having these high school students in the department to help out, to learn about it. Of course, I'm a former member of the board of Community Law in Action, so I've been involved with CLIA for many, many years, and I'm just very excited about the opportunities that we can create. So I share your passion for getting these kids interested in the law, and I might include in that, Councilman, getting them interested in law enforcement careers,
Yep.
as well as lawyer-type careers.
Yep.
I said to the mayor recently, we need to figure out a way. I really feel strongly about this. We need to figure out a way to get to sophomores and juniors at Coppin and Morgan State. I really feel this. And say to them, if you come to the Baltimore City Police Department, if you graduate from Morgan or Coppin, and I don't mean to exclude Hopkins or Loyola, but just to focus initially on those 2 universities, and we say to these sophomores, juniors, and seniors, maybe you majored in English, maybe you majored in political science, whatever you majored in, engineering, maybe you want to take a look at law enforcement. Go into the police academy, and if we could figure out a way to increase an inducement for that kind of career path, I think we would be going a long way to improving the kinds of things that the president said earlier about the Baltimore City Police Department. There's no reason a police officer shouldn't have a college degree. There's every reason a police officer should have a college degree. Not that, there are people with college degrees are better than anybody else, but so I'm thinking about those kinds of things all the time. Of course, one of the things that the mayor is focused on and the interim commissioner is focused on is reaching into the high schools and really ramping up our Explorer program and leading high school students into the cadet program for law enforcement. And any number of police officers go on, of course, to law school. And we're fortunate in Baltimore City that we actually have 2 law schools, each of which has an evening program. So, as I say, I share your passion. I would love to increase opportunities for high school students in particular, which I know is your interest, in spending time in the law department. And I will tell you, with some of the new technology that the council was nice enough to us last year in the law department to authorize, and the finance department, I don't want to forget Bob here, but we got this money for new technology, and as good as the technology is, and as much as the technology is going to save the city some money, we actually have jobs in the law department, not paying jobs, but opportunities for high school students to come in and do scanning and some other rudimentary work that high school students could do, learn a little bit about the law, see close up what lawyers do day by day, and I'm hoping that that will happen. I might close simply by mentioning I gave the commencement address at the University of Baltimore School of Law last week. Was it last week? Yeah, last week at the invitation of the dean. And I told the graduating class that when I got to the law department, I was curious to know how many people from the University of Baltimore and how many people from the University of Maryland. And it turned out to be like 12 and 12. So we love our homegrown talent, and I can tell you that I haven't taken account, but I'm confident in saying a large number of the lawyers in the law department live in the city, so they have skin in the game. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Judge. Councilman Pinkett?
No, I just wanted to second Judge Davis's sentiments, and I actually think that the police academy should be at Coppin. Put it right there in the heart of West Baltimore, where officers not only would be able to engage with the campus, but engage with the community, so we can already build in sensitivity. So thank you for making those remarks.
That would be a terrific thing.
Judge, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Sorry for delaying dinner.
We are in recess
But
until
Thank you for the courtesies.
We are in recess till 6:30 p.m. sharp.
It's just 5 minutes off